It was the night the devil came down to Harlem, not to bargain for souls, but to watch them burn. August 1943. The heat was a physical weight, a wet wool blanket pressing down on the chest of every man, woman, and child. North of 110th Street, it was the kind of heat that made the pavement soft and tempers brittle as dried kindling. I was just a 12-year-old kid then, clutching a shoe-shine box that was worth more than my life, hiding in the recessed doorway of a pawn shop on 125th Street. I remember the smell, not just the garbage baking in the alleyways, but the sudden, sharp, acrid tang of smoke and gasoline. The rumor had started at the Hotel Braddock on 126th Street, like a match dropped in a bucket of kerosene. They said a white cop had shot a black soldier, Robert Bandy, right in the chest while he was trying to help a woman. By the time the story traveled 3 blocks, Bandy wasn't just wounded, he was dead. By the time it hit the pool halls and the jazz clubs, he had been executed in cold blood. The truth didn't matter anymore. Rage, ancient and deep, had found its trigger. I watched through the cracks of the metal gate as my neighborhood tore itself apart. It was a symphony of destruction. Plate glass windows shattered with the rhythm of a discordant jazz drum solo. Molotov cocktails arched through the night sky like angry comets, exploding against police cruisers. Men I knew, fathers, deacons, shopkeepers, were running down the avenue with armfuls of looted goods, their eyes wide with a terrifying mixture of glee and fury. The police were retreating, their lines broken, overwhelmed by the sheer tidal wave of black grief turned to violence. But we all knew what was coming next. The word was already out. The mayor was calling in the National Guard. Tanks, machine guns. They weren't coming to arrest people. They were coming to flatten Harlem, while the world outside was screaming. The office above the Dragon's Den was silent. The air conditioning unit hummed a low, steady drone, battling the summer swelter. Bumpy Johnson sat behind his mahogany desk, a game of chess set out before him. He moved a rook, his fingers steady, his face a mask of stone. He was wearing a silk robe over his trousers, the picture of a man preparing for bed, not a war. The door burst open. It was Junie, one of his top lieutenants, sweating through his suit, his eyes wide with panic. "Bumpy, you gotta see this. The kids, they're losing their minds. They're burning the grocery stores. They're flipping cars on 7th Avenue. The cops pulled back to 96th Street. They say the guard is crossing the Triborough Bridge. They're bringing the heavy stuff, Bumpy. If they cross that line, it's gonna be a slaughterhouse." Bumpy didn't look up from the board. "White to move," he murmured. "If white moves the night, black loses the center. Bumpy, did you hear me? Harlem is burning." Bumpy stopped. He slowly lifted his head, and for the first time, Junie saw the fire in the king's eyes, not the wild, uncontrolled fire of the streets, but the cold, blue flame of a welding torch. "I heard you, Junie. I hear everything." He stood up, shedding the silk robe to reveal a crisp, white dress shirt and his shoulder holster. He didn't check the gun. He walked to the window and looked down at the inferno that was his kingdom. He saw the smoke rising from the businesses he protected. He saw his people, his customers, his neighbors, running blindly toward their own destruction. If the National Guard rolled in with tanks, they wouldn't distinguish between a looter and a grandmother. They would pave the streets with bodies. "Get the Cadillac," Bumpy said, buttoning his suit jacket. "And get me the megaphone from the rallies." "The megaphone?" "Boss, they're throwing bricks out there. You go out there, you're gonna get hit." Bumpy turned, fixing his tie in the reflection of the glass. "They throw bricks at the police, Junie. They don't throw bricks at me." I was still huddled in that doorway, when the black Cadillac Eldorado nosed its way onto 125th Street. It moved slowly, a leviathan parting a sea of chaos. The mob was a mindless beast, smashing and screaming. But as the car pushed forward, a strange ripple went through the crowd. People stopped mid-swing. The shouting faltered. The car stopped right in the middle of the intersection of 125th and 7th Avenue, the heart of the riot. The driver's side door didn't open. Instead, the back door swung wide. Bumpy Johnson stepped out. He didn't crouch. He didn't run. He stood to his full height, smoothed his lapels, and climbed up onto the hood of the car. He stood there, elevated above the madness, illuminated by the flickering orange light of a burning furniture store. He looked like a statue cast in iron and shadow. He raised the megaphone to his lips. The feedback squealed, a piercing shriek that cut through the noise of the riot, followed by that deep, unmistakable baritone voice that resonated in the chest of every man on the street. "Go home!" The command hit the crowd like a physical blow. 1,000 heads turned. "You damn fools!" Bumpy roared, his voice echoing off the brick facades. "Who do you think you're burning out? The white man? He don't live here. You're burning your own beds. You're burning the food your children need to eat tomorrow morning. Look at you." He pointed a finger into the crowd, spotting a familiar face. "Redbone, I see you. You put that TV down. You think that box is worth your life. And you, Big Mike. I paid your rent last month, and this is how you repay me. By setting fire to my neighborhood?" The crowd shifted. The anonymity of the mob was broken. They weren't a faceless wave anymore. They were individuals, and they were being scolded by the father of the neighborhood. The shame began to creep in, cooling the rage. "The soldiers are coming," Bumpy shouted, his voice dropping to a deadly serious register. "They are coming with machine guns. They want you to riot. They want an excuse to come in here and wipe us off the map. Don't give them the satisfaction. Go home. I will handle the police. I will handle the justice. But you... get off my streets." The crowd wavered. The looting stopped. But they didn't disperse. They were still angry, still hungry for blood. They needed something more than words. They needed a victory. Bumpy saw it in their eyes. He knew he had stalled them, but he hadn't stopped them. He needed a miracle. He hopped down from the hood of the car, his movement sharp and decisive. He walked over to a phone booth on the corner. The glass was shattered, crunching under his Italian leather shoes. But the handset was miraculously dangling by its cord, still humming with a dial tone. I watched from 10 feet away, holding my breath. Bumpy fished a dime from his pocket, dropped it in, and dialed. He didn't dial a local number. He dialed the direct line to Gracie Mansion. The operator tried to block him. Bumpy simply said, "Tell the little flower that Harlem is holding a match to the fuse, and I'm the only one with a bucket of water." A moment later, the voice of Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia crackled over the line. "Johnson, this better be good. I have General Drum on the other line. We're moving in 10 minutes. If you move in, Fiorello, you won't be the mayor of New York tomorrow. You'll be the butcher of Harlem," Bumpy said. He wasn't shouting. He was speaking with the terrifying calmness of a man holding a detonator. "Don't threaten me, you gangster," LaGuardia barked, his famous temper flaring. "Your people are rioting. They're criminals." "My people are angry," Bumpy corrected, his voice cutting like a razor. "They're angry because Officer Collins shot a man for being black in a uniform. You want peace? Give me something to sell them." "I don't negotiate with the underworld. You're not negotiating," Bumpy said, leaning against the broken frame of the booth. Watching the National Guard trucks beginning to line up on the far side of the bridge, their headlights cutting through the smoke. You're accepting a donation. I'm donating order to your city. Here is the price. You suspend Collins immediately. Publicly. You announce an investigation, and you keep those trucks on the other side of the bridge for 1 hour. You give me the hour. And if I don't? Then I get back in my car, I drive home, and I let nature take its course. And when the smoke clears, and the bodies are counted, the voters will remember that LaGuardia chose war when he could have had peace. There was a silence on the line. It stretched for 10 seconds, an eternity. I could hear the crackle of the burning store behind me, the heavy breathing of the mob waiting for a sign. Bumpy just stood there, looking at his fingernails, gambling with the fate of 500,000 people. 30 minutes. LaGuardia finally grunted. If there is one brick thrown after 30 minutes, the tanks go in. 30 minutes is all I need. Bumpy hung up. He didn't smile. He walked back to the Cadillac, climbed back onto the hood, and raised the megaphone again. "Listen to me," he bellowed. "I just got off the phone with downtown. The mayor knows. The cop who shot Bandy is done. He is suspended. There will be a trial. They hear you." A murmur went through the crowd. It wasn't total victory, but it was something. It was respect. "The National Guard is holding back," Bumpy continued. "But only if you clear these streets. You have won. You made them listen. Now go home and live to see the victory. Go." It didn't happen all at once. But slowly, like a fever breaking, the tension snapped. A man dropped a toaster he had stolen. Another threw down a pipe. Someone shouted, "Bumpy got him! Bumpy fixed it!" The chant started low and grew louder. "Bumpy! Bumpy!" They began to disperse, melting back into the tenements, slipping into the subway stations. The rage had been acknowledged. The thirst for justice momentarily slaked by the word of the one man they trusted more than the law. I watched Bumpy Johnson stand on that car until the street was empty, save for the debris and the smoke. The distant rumble of the National Guard trucks faded as the engines were cut. They never crossed the bridge. Bumpy climbed down. He looked tired. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped a smudge of soot from his cheek. He looked at me, a scared little kid in a doorway, and for a second, his eyes softened. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a silver dollar, and flipped it to me. I caught it, my hands trembling. "Get home, kid," he said softly. "The show's over." He got back into the Cadillac, and the car slid away into the darkness, disappearing like a phantom. The newspapers the next day gave credit to the mayor's restraint and the community leader's pleas. But everybody who was on 125th Street that night knew the truth. We knew that for 1 hour, the city of New York didn't belong to LaGuardia, and it didn't belong to the U.S. Army. It belonged to a gangster in a bespoke suit who stopped a war with a megaphone and a dime. That was the night we learned that kings don't always wear crowns. Sometimes they just drive Cadillacs. Bye.